Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
I was at the apartment writing a long note to one of my old team now in Afghanistan when Shirley came in the door, carrying a big covered baking pan. She had doctored her eye with some makeup and it didn't look as bad, but I knew it probably still hurt like hell. Oh boy, Shirley, smells good and I'm starved. I'm just going to put this on the stove and we can fill our plates from there. How about a beer and some of those rolls we bought to go with this? The gravy is thick and will taste good on bread. When we were seated and had started eating, Shirley said, "Don't know where the old man is." I told him what time the food was going to be done. I guess he'll eat out at the clubhouse. He's probably feeling guilty. He usually does after he loses it with me. Hope he comes back looking for some loving before he takes off again. I have a feeling he won't stick around long this time. I nodded and kept stuffing. The pot roast was delicious. A bike roared up behind the building, and Shirley went to the door then out back. Soon Shirley and her guy came in. She fixed him a plate and got him a beer. He took a bite. Damn, this is good. I could get used to eating like this. Look, Chad, I lost my temper with Shirley earlier over something personal. I hope you can overlook the black eye. I looked at him and nodded, but figured I should say something. It's not my place to judge. Just don't mess with the cook. I enjoy the food. The man started laughing. You're my kind of guy. You mind your business, but still keep it real. So how was your night out with that group of women who picked you up yesterday? It was a fun time. We went to the Hard Rock out at the reservation. Got to see AC/DC, had some drinks, danced a bit, and hung out in the lounge until late. Real good time. He asked, what were you celebrating? The unemployment agency hired me as the agent who finds jobs for people getting out of the military and for ex-military people that are looking. I have to go out looking for various jobs and employers, plus go to the base and other military facilities to tell people about the service. It should be fun. I like helping people, so this ought to be a good job. Now I'm going to be able to afford to pay rent and eat. I was worried for a while. The man looked at me. If you were concerned about money, how come you made the deal with Cheryl? Easy. I don't cook very well, and I get tired of frozen dinners. Buying food to feed us costs less than a frozen dinner, so I get fed good for less. Didn't think about it like that. Pretty smart. How did you know to do that? I have a buddy up in Chicago that does the same thing. He and his old lady and the couple next door to them cook together and eat better for it. He says they actually save about 50%. With me eating here too, your theory gets messed up. I'm glad you're feeding me though. So far, I'm under budget for what I had planned. I think there's still food for Sunday. After that I have to take Shirley to the grocery store again. I'll make sure we plan on the three of us. We can have some Italian. That's cheap and it goes a long way. I'm hoping to keep getting leftovers for lunches. He finished chewing his food and offered, you want to go out to my clubhouse with me this evening? They're having a party and invite prospective members out. Gonna be a bunch of property out there. Property? I asked. You know, fluff, babes that were the property of Patches. The Prez calls M comfort hostesses. Come on out. How about I stop in with you and meet your people? I have an appointment later with a friend for some bar hopping. Is that okay? Sure, the club will know I'm out networking. You haven't worn a patch before, have you? No, I've always ridden solo except during my time in a pretty tight-knit group in the service. He asked what group was that? The Marines. Special Forces. In our case, counterintelligence. Well, you got your leg messed up, so I guess you're not part of that group anymore. I gave him a look. Once a Marine, always a Marine. It's for life. My fellow Marines still consider me one of them, and I feel the same. That's how it works. I know we've got a few former Marines in the National Club. Tough folks. But I don't think any of them ever lost a leg. Come out. I'll introduce you to them. Do yourself a favor, don't call them former Marines. Once a Marine, always a Marine. It's a mindset. It's how we live. I said it firmly, and I think he got the message. What time you heading out? He asked. Right after I clean up. Maybe Shirley will come along. Will you, Cheryl? She smiled at her man. Of course, honey. I'll stick close tonight. Just want to be there for you. He frowned, then smiled. Okay, you took it when I dished it out. We're even. Don't let it happen again. He looked at me and said, something personal, sorry. I nodded. Shirley did the dishes, and I went out and wiped down my bike, checked the oil, getting ready to ride. Back inside, I called the Fab Five's house to have it answered by Brandy. I'm going out riding tonight, and I'm calling to see if any of you guys want to take a ride with me. Going to wander around bar hopping. Brandy said, I have a date, but our resident Les would probably like to go. She loves bikes and knows all the bars. Let me get her. Frida came on the phone. Sounds good, Chad. You don't mind if I don't wear a helmet, do you? I hate those things. If you listen to me, I'll take you to some neat places. What time you coming by? How about 8? I'm going out to a local bike club for a few minutes to meet some people, but we'll be out of there no later than 7:30. If I'm early, is that okay? Frida said, the earlier the better. See ya. Shirley was gone, so I hopped in the shower to clean up dressing in jeans and a t-shirt. I had a denim jacket if it got chilly, so I stuffed it into my saddlebags. I checked my wallet and decided I only wanted to have $100 on me, so I hid the rest that I had and went out the back after locking up. I was pushing the bike around, getting it pointed out when Shirley and her old man came out. "Follow me. When we get there, they're going to shake you down, so if you're packing, you might want to leave it." I shrugged and gave hand signs that I was not packing. The clubhouse was only about 10 minutes from the apartments, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. The gate guards allowed us both in, but had me wait while one of them closed the gate. He had me turn off the bike and then patted me down for whatever he was looking for. Finding nothing, he told me to park in the visitor area and have my host accompany me when I left. Shirley's husband was waiting for me and led me to their social area, which had a bunch of lawn chairs and picnic tables. There were several women in casual attire, some wearing mini skirts and open vests labeled with the club's name. A few men, wearing vests with prospect written on them, quickly offered beers to the three of us. I was introduced to the club president, who then looked around and brought over a couple of men. They were introduced as former Marines. One of them said, "Damn, how many times do I have to tell you there's no such thing as an ex-Marine? Come on, listen to me." He turned away from him, extended his hand, and said, "Semper Fi." I replied enthusiastically, "Aura." The man winked and asked what unit I had served with and how long I'd been out. I told him about my time with the Special Forces group and mentioned that I had retired just this past Monday. "How bad you hurt?" I used my cane to knock on my metal stalk that held me up. He nodded and slapped me on the back. "Wilson here was only in for a year before he got gut shot during the first Desert Storm. Still bitter they wouldn't let him back in, but with the way he has to eat now, they couldn't keep him." Me? I did 2 tours, one in Afghanistan, one in Iraq. I'm done. Can't stand the extreme weather over there. Florida sans easier, at least there aren't any biting bugs the size of rodents. We chatted until close to 7. I mentioned I had plans for the evening. The two of them glanced over at our host, who was in a heated argument. "That man never learns," one said. "Always riled up about something. We'll walk you to the gate and let him know you had to leave. Come back and visit us. Think about joining up. I'm Bucky, and this is Wilson. Ask for us, we'll vouch for you. Marines don't have to prove themselves again. No one messes with us." They walked me out, and I rode over to the Fab Five's place. At 7:20, Frida came out carrying a jacket. I put it in the saddlebag. She climbed on, and we headed toward Jonas. Jonah and Millie welcomed us warmly, surprised to see Frida with me. Millie laughed and said, "Didn't expect to see her with anyone new." Frida grinned. "He's good company. I think I'll stick around a while longer." Millie chuckled, hugging me warmly. "He must be something special then." While I tried to regain some breathing space, Frida said, "He's kind, thoughtful, and treats everyone with respect. He just has a way about him that makes you feel seen." Millie turned to Jonah with a grin. "Find me one like that for my birthday." Hard to keep a straight face around Millie, especially when Frida joins in. Being a Saturday night, lots of folks were out riding and bar hopping. Frida spotted some friends, so we headed to another place. At the next bar, I felt a little out of place, seemed I was the only guy there except a large, friendly bouncer. As we stepped inside, Frida shouted, "Hey Sam, come out here and make good on that drink you owe me." A woman with short hair stepped out from behind the bar, raising an eyebrow at me. "You're not usually welcome here," she said. Frida stepped in. "He's with me, Sam. Don't worry, he's good people." Sam gave me a long look. "You sure about him?" "I'm sure," Frida replied. "I haven't had this much fun in a while." Sam eyed me again. "All right, he can stay for a drink, but only one." She nodded to the bartender. "Give the man a beer, then get Joey to walk him out. Just being cautious." Frida laughed. "Don't worry, he's not looking to cause trouble. Just enjoying the night." The other women around us chuckled at her enthusiasm. A few came over, joking and playfully chatting. Frida laughed with them. "Careful, he's contagious. Spend enough time around him, and you might not want to leave." Then she turned to me. "Give them a smile, and let's get moving. I've got more places to show you." We hit 2 more places before I felt like I had all the beer I could hold. We were on the way back toward Tampa when Frida said in my ear, "Take me home. Take me to your place. I want to wake next to you in the morning." Frida had been fun, so I quietly rolled up to my back door, shutting down while still coasting. I noticed Bart's bike was back and was glad I was being quiet. After quickly chaining up the bike, I unlocked the back door and brought Frida inside. I rummaged around in my duffel to find her one of the new toothbrushes I had. We brushed our teeth and crawled into bed with the window open. I didn't realize how tanked Frida had been getting, but we had just snuggled when I could tell she was gone. It was nice snuggling with a naked lady anyway. I fell sound asleep. I woke to noise in the kitchen. I opened an eye and could see into the kitchen where Shirley was getting pans out to cook breakfast. I slid from bed to close the door, but Shirley saw me before I was done. "Hey stud, I see you have company. Do you mind if I get the old man some breakfast? He's a little hungover and needs some food." I'm making pancakes, so I'll make you guys some too. I closed the door and crawled back in bed. Frida had her eyes open and was smiling. Do you have a maid, or is that another girlfriend? She's a neighbor that I share food with. I buy, she cooks. It's a good deal, and we both get fed. Frida snuggled into me and kissed me. I woke in the middle of the night and wanted to wake you up to ravish you, but you were so peaceful looking I let you sleep. And just think, I was drunk on my butt last night. You could have done anything you wanted to me, but you just cuddled up and we slept. Some biker you are. After a few more kisses, Frida said, I need the bathroom bad, and I have to get some aspirin out of my belly pack. I tried to drink the bars dry, didn't I? Frida surprised me by getting up naked and walking out of the bedroom to the bathroom. When she was through in the bathroom, she walked into the kitchen where I could hear her talking to Shirley. Then I heard Bart's gravely voice. This babe had balls. I quickly got up and slid my jeans on, only to meet Frida as she came in the bedroom with a cup of coffee for me. She smiled and said, now you have a rep. Shirley's guy is out there with his tongue dragging on the floor. I stood there talking to Shirley and kept scratching my coochie right in front of him. How did you know Shirley's name? I asked curious. I didn't. That was the first thing I asked her. I said to her, what's your name? Honey, I need to find out where a glass is so I can get some water for some aspirin. She told me. So I said, Shirley, get me a cup so I can take Chad some coffee to get him started. Her old man was having a cow. I guess he knows I'm heterosexual now anyway, I said with a smile. Put something on so I can think of something I'd rather eat than you. I'm hungry for you and food. As Frida pulled on her jeans and t-shirt, she said, let's get some chow, and after that I'll take care of that other hunger. We ate with Shirley and Bart, then I told Shirley to scoot, that Frida and I would do dishes. They were quickly done, and we took a quick shower. Frida thought it was funny how I had to constantly hop and grab hold of things to keep my balance. I told her to try to do her stuff on one foot and tell me how easy it was. After drying off, Frida helped me back to bed, snuggling into me with lots of kisses. It wasn't long till we were going after each other in that ancient physical dance that men and women have been doing since time began. It took a while, but when we were finally satisfied, Frida said, I wasn't kidding last night to Sam. This is so good. I'm going to have to try out some other guys to find out if it's as good, or what. I like this stuff. I used to go home with Jonah and Millie, but I never would let Jonah touch me. Millie and I would do each other until I was zoned. Then Jonah would bang her senseless. I want to try them out again and let Jonah do me that way this time. See, you've made me a new woman. Soon, we cleaned up and dressed, so I could give Frida a ride home. No one was at her house, so I kissed her goodbye, saying I would see her in the morning. At home, I discovered all of my new shirts had been washed and ironed. I used the rest of the day to clean the bike, the pickup, and gave the apartment a dusting. I noticed when I came in that there was something on low in the oven, so I checked to find Shirley was making lasagna. She came in, pulled the tray from the oven, and cranked the oven up. Once it was at the right temperature, she put the tray back in and said, we'll eat in about 45 minutes. If you want something to go with that, get it out. You still have some lettuce. Do you want a salad? I ate a salad, set the table, and was enjoying a beer when Bart and Shirley came in. They teased me about Frida a little, but mainly ate. Bart was on his good behavior without being confrontational. Shirley was just enjoying having her man around. Bart said, I heard there is a big job down at Tampa Shipyard. Some big ship is in to get cleaned up. That's right up my alley, so I'm going down early in the morning to see if I can get on. I need to hang around here a little before I lose this lady. I know I have a golden girl, I just don't treat her like it. I'm a-telling you straight, I'm going to try to do this right. At least for a while. Then we'll see. Shirley was obviously happy, smiling with pleasure. She washed dishes and said, Bart has to be down to the shipyard at 8, so we have to eat breakfast early. If you want, I can just take his breakfast and cook it at home, and you can eat later. That's fine, Shirley. I need to get an early start anyway. I'll be up by 5:30. See you too when you get here. And that lasagna was great. Can I take some of that for lunch tomorrow? Shirley was happy receiving the compliment. That's why I made so much. I'll freeze some for another meal, but I'll keep out a couple of helpings for lunches. In the morning, I was showered and partially dressed by the time Shirley came in around 5:45. Bart was done and gone by 6:15, while I relaxed a little before finishing getting ready. Somehow I knew Ms. White was going to be early, so I showed up at 7:30 and met her coming in. After she put her personal stuff in her office, we went up to my new office on the 3rd floor. The former employee had not been in the office for what looked like months, as there were stacks of mail throughout the room. Ms. White told me to go through the mail and try to straighten the office, keeping in mind what the goal of the job was. By noon, I had taken 2 loads of trash down to the dumpster out back, and the office was beginning to look like an office. I ate my lasagna at lunch with the usual group and was teased by the envious women about the great time we had out at the Hard Rock the previous Friday. No one mentioned that I had stayed over. I spent the second half of the day going through the mail the second time around to make sure of what was worth keeping, reducing the stacks to about half. I did find a notice that my department had a healthy advertising budget to help me find jobs for exiting servicemen and women and to attract out-of-work retired or released personnel. Among the mess, I also found a job directive with an SOP, standard operating procedure, flip book that I wanted to study later. I figured that if I could read up on what I was supposed to be doing, I could make up a game plan for what to do. Ms. White came up toward the end of the day and was amazed that the office looked like an office. It really was roomy, actually larger than Ms. White's, but it didn't have any windows like she had. The lack of windows didn't matter because a lot of my work was going to be out of the office anyway. In addition to the desk, a large credenza, and 2 side chairs, I had a nice little conference table with 4 chairs to have meetings at or to use for interviews. I was gifted with a nice small combination stereo, radio, and CD player that had been left, so I had music to work by. I found a soothing soft jazz station that went very well in the office. When the day was done, I gathered the stuff I wanted to read later and put it into a very nice satchel that had been left in the office. Out in the parking lot, the Fab Five were standing around a little Saturn sports car. Tiani hollered for me to join them. Judy asked me, "We go over to Rocky's after work for a few minutes most every night. Want to join us? We don't stay long, but it's always nice to stop for 1 or 2. I nodded and went for my truck. The girls followed me on foot, so I knew then that Rocky's must be close. At the end of the parking lot, we went into a back door of a neighborhood bar that was full of office workers. I recognized several people from the counter area and smiled and nodded as people said hi. We found an open booth and the 6 of us crowded into it. I was seated between Tiani and Nora on one side, with Judy, Frida, and Brandy on the other. A waitress came by to take our order. Brandy started the conversation by saying, "So, Frida took you to some of her usual spots Saturday night. I'm glad. She usually either stays home or goes to her regular places. She must have had a good time, since she wasn't home when I got up." Frida replied, "I even took him to one of my favorite spots. There's a running joke that if someone who's not typically interested in the scene goes for it, they get a free drink." Chad handled the jokes well. We went to a few other places until he said enough. I was so out of it, I don't even remember going to bed. Chad was a real gentleman and didn't take advantage. Brandy said, "He was probably afraid you were going to get sick on him." We had a couple of drinks before we all left to go wherever it was we were going. I went back to the apartment and changed out of my new suit for some jeans and t-shirt. Shirley had supper just about done and Bart was sitting on my couch, watching TV drinking a beer. I popped a beer and dug out the manual I had brought home, hoping to glean some information from it. The thing was written like a lot of government instructions, very dry and not very descriptive. You will do this, you will do that sort of thing. After supper, I really dug in and was able to figure out what I was supposed to do and what the job really entailed. There was a hell of a budget for my position with some heavy expenses expected. I pulled the advertising notice out again to reread it and discovered that the Washington office was requesting a reason why no money had been spent for advertising. I would work on spending some of the budget right away. The next reading was the SOP. It was a little more plain language and was set up more in a Monday through Friday manner. It gave suggested daily objectives and contacts plus described the reports that were to be filed on Friday. I would have to find the forms they were describing. By 10 I was tired, ready for bed, so I locked up and crashed. Shirley woke me up at 5:30 when she came in the back door to start breakfast. I hopped around getting a shower and dressing. Bart was finished eating by the time I was dressed, saying he needed to be at work by 6:45 every day. He said he was hired yesterday and was able to get in a full day. He seemed happy to be staying around for a while. I was back at work at 7:30, meeting Ms. White in the parking lot again. She said for me to get settled in my office this morning, and she would be up around 8:30. By the time she showed, I had a list on a yellow pad of what I wanted to accomplish today. I showed her the manual I had read and the SOP, along with my goals for the day. She said that there were copies of suggested advertising down in the media office, so that would be easier. She said I should establish regular office hours so counter people would know when I would be in the office. She told me to let her know about anything out of the ordinary I might find in the office, and not to tell anyone else. I skipped a few items on my list and went to the media office to get some suggested advertising. They had a huge folder that had never been opened, so I took the whole thing back to my office. When I called the newspaper to get pricing, I was shocked at the quoted rates. The budget would be used up with one small ad. There were other ways to get into the newspaper, so I called the media office and asked if they used an agency. They did, so I called them. They told me they would send an advertising specialist over right away. I called the local Air Force Base employment office and introduced myself. I made an appointment to visit with them on Wednesday morning and remembered to call the motor pool to reserve a vehicle. A guy there said that my department had a car reserved all the time, but that it had not been brought in for service for over 6 months. I asked him to write a note about it and forward it to the director, as well as Ms. White. I would use my pickup if necessary, until they found the car. The advertising guy came, and I expressed my concern over the rates that I had been quoted. He assured me that the rates his agency received were a quarter of what the paper quoted. I showed him what I wanted for this coming Sunday, and he helped set it up with the hours I would be in the office. I would be in the office on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday mornings, and Wednesday and Friday afternoons. I called Ms. White to see if those firm hours would be good, and she agreed. The agency guy said he wanted to get some free advertising by getting out a news release on me. He interviewed me, getting my military background along with my other personal information. He said, "I'll play down your lack of a degree and play up your quick rank in the military. That should give a good impression. I'll put this in each of the regional inserts, plus I'll get it into the St. Pete Times. That should be worth some activity. Don't worry about your budget. I can get good-sized ads in every Sunday without ever going over your budget." I told him I wanted to advertise that we had jobs, but to advertise for people to use the service. He looked through the suggested advertising copy and selected another cut. This should take care of getting them in to use the service. I'll put your office hours on this along with your name, and you should be busier than a one-armed paper hanger. Lunchtime was the typical good time, eating with the Fab Five and the other folks that stayed in for lunch. Ms. White came in and asked me to stop in her office before going back upstairs. The girls made sure I was going to stop with them after work before I left, heading toward Ms. White's office. She had a new temp at the desk I had sat in, and she announced me to Ms. White. "Chad, the car is a problem. The girl who had the job won't give it back, so I've asked the director to have a U.S. Marshal go out to get it." He became pretty nervous over the whole thing, so there may be more to that girl just not coming to work. I'm going to let it slip to the motor pool that they need to track it down or to report it missing. Not stolen, just missing. We'll see if that helps. In the meantime, you can use my agency vehicle if you need it. I'll use my truck. It's clean with a good body and should pass the base inspection when I go out there in the morning. I'll use it until they find me a car. Ms. White nodded her agreement and handed me a box of business cards. It was funny to see my name on a federal government business card. It was very impressive. I told her that I had begun advertising and had an appointment at the air base in the morning. She reminded me, "You may find notes or something strange up there. If you do, give them to me and don't pass anything around." I worked on my list till 2:30 when I decided to go through the desk and credenza drawers to clean them out. They had been stuffed with notes and various papers. Before I could even start, the director walked into my office and did a quick look around. "How are you doing in your new job, Chad?" "Great, sir. So far everything is going smoothly. I see you've cleaned up in here. What did you do? Just use a shovel and scoop it out?" I sorted it all out and threw away everything that didn't affect the agency or the job. "It wasn't too bad." He said, "Cleaned up and out everything, huh?" "Yes, sir. I needed a starting point and found the department directory as well as the SOP. I've already begun using it to establish an office procedure." "That's great to hear." Say, "Chad, if you run into anything in the files or wherever that looks strange or out of place, let me have it, okay? Sometimes past employees leave landmines around." "Yes, sir, I'll do that. Oh, by the way, nice suit. Have you already spent your allowance?" "Most of it, sir. Ms. White and her husband took me shopping last Saturday and helped me pick out clothes. As you can see, they have good taste. I'll say, that's a $1,000 Brooks Brothers suit you have on. I hope you got a discount." "A big discount, sir. I think it's called the Men's Outlet Mart." "Oh yeah, I know the place. It's in a real seedy part of town. Be careful down there." I thought that was a little strange coming from a guy like him. I guess he's above getting a deal on clothes. When he left, I began going through the drawers. The center one didn't have anything of importance in it and was soon empty, but it kept sticking. I'd get to it later. In the top right drawer, I found a bunch of notes that were for after-hours meetings with the director. It seemed strange for there to be so many, so I saved those and put them in an envelope. The addresses on the notes varied, and they didn't mean anything to me. In the bottom left-hand drawer, I found some letters and cards that were obviously personal, as they appeared to be love letters. I was going to Chad them, but decided to look inside one. The notes were handwritten and were all signed by the same name as the director. I quickly shoved all of them into the big envelope. The credenza was another mess. There were more notes, letters, and cards, plus a big envelope that I opened that had a bunch of 8x10 photos of the director and some girl that I didn't recognize. The photos were of them in suits, with some in casual clothes. I put those aside and finished throwing away the junk from the credenza. I saved all the agency books and manuals, but threw away 2 years of out-of-date telephone books from around the area. The cleaning people were going to hate me, but I didn't feel like making multiple trips to the dumpster again. I would take one box down as I left tonight, but that was all. It was 4:30, so I still had some time. I figured on fixing the center drawer on the desk. I got down on my knees to look to see if I could see what was catching and saw something taped under the desk that the drawer was catching on. There was a large envelope duct taped to the bottom of the desk. I slowly peeled off the tape so I wouldn't destroy whatever it was holding. When I had it free, I put the drawer back up before looking inside the envelope. Oops. The envelope was stuffed with dozens of porno photographs. It took a couple of seconds before I realized that the people in the photos were the director and the lady in the other pictures. Plus, there were some people that I recognized from other departments. I'd bet this is what the director was looking for. I'd also bet that this is what Ms. White expected as well. I put everything I had found into my satchel and went downstairs to see Ms. White. I didn't even take the big box of trash down. Before I went downstairs, though, I wrote a short note to Ms. White, but didn't sign it. It said, "Call me on my cell between 5:30 and 6. I made it to Ms. White's office just as she was closing her door. She asked me, "Do you lock your office up at night?" "No, ma'am. There's nothing in it that isn't from the agency, so there's no need. Besides, I'm hoping the cleaning people will finish taking the trash out. The place needs a good scrubbing. You might have to do the thorough scrubbing yourself, but you can ask to have it painted if you want. I'll ask the janitor crew to give your office some special attention. I know the previous person always had it locked, and they couldn't get in. We were in the hallway alone. So I gave her the note and made the motion of the finger in front of my lips to be quiet. She nodded in understanding, and she went to her car as I went to my pickup. I put my satchel in it and walked to Rocky's. The girls were already there. They must have split 30 seconds early to be there already. They were discussing something that had happened to Nora that day. Nora said, "I'm going to tell Chad. He'll have an opinion." The other girls looked at each other, but they all shrugged their shoulders. Nora said, "The director had me in his office most of this afternoon for what he was calling my annual interview. My boss gives me my review, not the director." Anyway, after the first 15 minutes, the man was very forward, asking me to go out with him, asking me over to his place to party with him and his wife. He was even saying how he could get me a special job at the agency that paid really well. That isn't right. I'm thinking about telling my boss. Tierney said, "You know, he did that with Brandy and with me too. I just let him know I wasn't interested and he let me go. You know the amount of times he called Brandy at home until she threatened him, saying she would let her dad know he was harassing her." Nora said to me, "What do you think I should do, Chad?" I dug out my little notebook and wrote Ms. White's cell number on it. "Call this number later. You'll recognize the voice. Tell that person about your problem and mention Tierney and Brandy had the same problem." "Who is this?" Nora asked. "Just call. Don't talk about this stuff to anyone else, especially at work. Too many places have ears. Do you guys always sit in this booth?" See, if I wanted to know some office gossip, I could bug this booth and I'd know everything fast. This is better than the lunchroom because you think no one knows you're here. It's always best to discuss personal stuff away from crowds. The girls all looked at each other and decided to just tell some jokes and personal stories, letting the bad conversation go for the time being until it was time to leave the bar. I left the bar early so I could get my call from Ms. White. I was just inside my pickup at 5:30 when my cell phone rang. It was Ms. White. "What is all the cloak and dagger stuff about, Chad? I found some stuff in the office today that is pretty personal in nature that you might want to look at so you can decide what to do with it. Where can I give this to you? How much is it, Chad? My satchel is full. 4 or 5 big envelopes, and it is sensitive enough that I don't wish to give it to someone to give to you later. I wish to hand it over to you personally. I'm at my husband's restaurant that we went to Saturday. Can you come by there now? It's just down the street. I'll be there in 5 to 10, depending on traffic and parking. Park in the back next to my car. I'll tell the security guard to look for your pickup." I drove to the restaurant and parked. Ms. White met me in the kitchen and took me to a big office. I began handing her stuff in the envelopes that she looked at quickly and said, "This is some really personal stuff. My goodness, there must be a year's worth of letters and cards." She looked at the first photos I had found and said, "These are from the big agency party we had a year or so ago." I got ready to hand her the envelope with the porn in it. "Ms. White, in this envelope are some photos that are going to offend you. If you are easily offended, let someone else look at them and describe them. These are not for the squeamish and are very damning." She wrinkled her forehead and said, "Give them to me. I'm no prude." After she began looking through them, she exclaimed, "Oh shit. Damn, would you look at that? It looks like, Chad, did you look at these closely?" "Not too close. I didn't want to get caught looking at stuff like that at work." "Where did you find these?" I said. The center drawer on my desk was sticking as I was trying to fix it. "I found those in an envelope taped to the bottom of the desk." Ms. White thought for a minute and said, "Go home. I may call you later." I told Mrs. White, "I gave your number to someone who will call you. They have a problem with this same guy. I told them you would help." She nodded and made a motion shooing me out. At home, Bart and Shirley had just begun to eat, so I quickly took off my tie and coat and sat to eat. Bart had to comment, "What kind of job do you have that you dress up fancy like that?" "I find jobs for military people when they get out of service or retire. I just started, so I'm just getting into it. If you run into any electricians or other tradespeople getting out, there are a lot of jobs out at the shipyard. They even have labor jobs out there right now." "Thanks, Bart." I'll come out there to get a listing. Hopefully, beginning next week, a lot of men who have gotten out of the service recently will ask for help finding work. Before I had finished eating, my cell phone rang. It was Ms. White. Can you come back to the restaurant for a few minutes? I want you to meet someone. I told her that I would be there in about a half hour. I finished eating and put my tie back on, grabbed my coat, and left. I parked in back of the restaurant next to Ms. White's car again. Inside, I went to the office and knocked. Reggie let me in saying, "You sure stirred up a hornet's nest, Chad." Ms. White introduced me to Howard Smith, U.S. Marshal. We shook hands, and he motioned for me to sit. "Tell me, Mr. Johnson, where exactly did you find all this information that you gave Mrs. White?" I told him the story, and afterward he asked, "Have you had any conversations with the director?" He came by earlier and asked that I give him anything unusual that I might find in the office. He seemed happy that I had thrown everything away. We just had a couple of our men go out to the lady's house that is pictured here to pick up the agency car. She was not very nice and is currently in custody for assault. She's running her mouth off, telling us all kinds of things. We may not need anything you found to convict the director of misappropriation of government funds, but I wanted to let you know that you could be in danger if he finds out you have turned him in. Ms. White is in an equal amount of danger. If I arrest him now, he may get out on bail since it takes forever to take someone to trial on a federal charge. It's during that time that I would want you to be careful. I asked the man, "What are you going to do, Mr. Smith?" "Call me Howard. I think I'm going to investigate the director a little more. I'd like to find a few hooks that I could use to recover some money. I can keep the lady in quiet custody for a while so she can't let the cat out of the bag, but if he gets wind there's a problem, he could get weird." "Where do you live?" I gave him my apartment address, and he said he would have the Tampa police do some drive-bys to keep tabs on the neighborhood, but that wouldn't protect me very much. He suggested I find a more secure apartment. I was back home by 7 and decided I needed some excitement. So I changed clothes to jeans and a t-shirt and took the bike out for some exercise. Actually, I rode straight to Jonah's. It was a slow night, so I played pool with Jonah and with Millie while enjoying a couple of beers. Back home, I brushed my teeth and was in bed by 10:30. At work the next morning, I checked in with Ms. White and advised the group secretary where I would be and what my cell phone number was. Ms. White said that I could use an agency car as they had mine back, but it had to be replaced. At the motor pool, I was given a plain white Ford Focus. It was fairly stripped, but had air and a radio. I drove out to the base and was directed to the employment office. I explained what my plan was and that if they could keep me posted on what positions were open on base, I would appreciate it. The lady there gave me the name and telephone number of the personnel office out at the post office, plus several of the agencies in the city. I was back at the agency by noon, in time to eat with everyone. My lunch today was a surprise as it was a couple of sandwiches made up by Shirley and an apple. The Fab Five were planning a weekend excursion to a place called the Don Caesar in St. Petersburg. They said it wouldn't be real expensive and that we could get a room together to split costs. Some of the other ladies in the lunchroom looked at us a little strange, but the girls said, "Chad is the perfect gentleman. We would never hesitate to share a room with him." Too bad, though. We've all been trying to make him a little less gentlemanly. Larry heard that and said, perhaps Chad would prefer to go over there with me. He might not be such a gentleman with me. That's okay, Larry. I'd rather be teased by a bunch of cuties than by you. It will be fun to see all these girls and their unmentionables. It'll give me some nice dreams. Tiani hit me on the shoulder, saying, "Be nice, we'll just have to get you drunk and take advantage of you." I laughed and said, "Promises, promises." Ms. White asked if I could join her and her husband for supper this evening at the restaurant. I would never pass up free food, ma'am. What time? I was to meet them at 7. After work in Rockies, I went home and told Shirley that I was invited out that evening, so Bart should eat my share. Shirley said, "It's a roast, so you can take some with you for lunch tomorrow." I changed into a casual shirt with a sport coat and slacks. Reggie's sports bar and restaurant was sort of fancy, so I thought I would dress as I saw him dress the night before. Surprise, surprise, Howard Smith joined us for supper in a private dining room. First Howard spoke. "I'm not sure how much you should know of our investigation, but I thought you should know that it is continuing and that we've uncovered several areas that we are pursuing. From the extent of what we've found, my agency feels that anyone with information on the case should be aware of the potential dangers. Apparently, some underworld people are involved. We don't know to what extent yet, but they are being funneled fees through your agency, especially your department, Mr. Johnson, so you need to be especially concerned. I've asked that you be reassigned to DC or somewhere else for training. No one has responded yet, so this is to just let you know what may come." "Chad," Ms. White began, "Reggie wants to give you something before you leave, plus Howard has a permit that was issued to you today. I want you to be especially careful as the director did not come in today and Howard's people lost him this afternoon." Reggie leaned over the table and handed me a Browning semi-automatic 9mm. "Here, take this, it's yours." This is like what you had as a sidearm in service, and it's a piece I don't use anymore. He pulled back his coat. I have this neat 40 caliber Glock now that I carry. I can carry it in the bar here as the place is mine, and I'm a registered security agent. You are too now, so you can carry inside a bar, but be careful. A lot of people wouldn't understand, and it could get you in trouble. Howard said, I've registered you with my office and with the Tampa Police Department. You're in the Hillsborough County and Florida state records as well, so you shouldn't have any trouble if you were stopped. If a policeman stops you for a traffic violation, tell him you're armed immediately. That way he can look at your permit and check you out right away. Anyway, I hope you don't need that, but I brought along a couple of extra high-capacity magazines for it, and this box of rounds. For the first time, I picked up the piece Reggie had laid down in front of me and dropped the magazine and operated the slide to clear the chamber. The magazine was empty, so I put it back into the piece and let the slide forward. Reggie said, fill a clip, would you? Make me feel better. I'll do it before I leave. Reggie, I'd rather eat your good food first. As we finished, Ms. White said, DC called me today to let me know I was under consideration for a new position. I don't know whether it is because of all of this, or whether it's because the director is trying to get me out of this office. You see, when I first started there, he put the make on me and I shot him down quick and told him in no uncertain terms that he was on thin ice. His wife propositioned Reggie and me a couple of times at gatherings, but I didn't think too much of it until I viewed the pictures you brought to me. Howard has them now, and we'll be checking out those people in the photos. The other people from the agency may be harmless and just a member of a swingers group, but my people, along with another agency, will be checking these other people out, Howard said and added. I've asked the FBI to get another security clearance on you so I can have some private talks with you. Too bad you didn't finish your degree. I could use someone like you. Thanks, Mr. Smith. Howard, but I think my job is a good one, and I'm looking forward to helping other returning vets find work. This should be a good place to help others. Ms. White said, see, Howard, that's why I wanted this young man in our agency. He wants to do good. After supper, I went with Reggie to his office and loaded all 3 magazines. He rummaged in a closet and came out with a shoulder holster harness and a belt holster. Here, Chad, take these. They fit the Browning and won't work with the Glock. Reggie, I can't just take this from you. Let me buy it, okay? Ms. White laughed. Are you kidding? He's been saying he's going to turn that thing into the police department as it's just extra, and he doesn't want it anymore. Besides, Chad, if the director goes away, I'll probably get his job, and it pays about twice what I get now. It's a cushy job that pays a ton. There are benefits to the higher levels of government jobs. Reggie helped me with the shoulder holster checking to make sure I didn't have a bulge under my arm. Ms. White said, wear that, even to work. If you take off your jacket, put the whole thing in your desk drawer and lock it. If the drawers don't lock, tell me and I'll order a locksmith for you. On the way home, I thought to myself, this is a hell of a lot more trouble than it should be. I just needed a job, not all this mystery and supposed danger. Over there in Iraq, I knew where to look for danger, but here, I don't know where it is. I need to look at my place differently, I guess, and see what I can do to make it safe. At home, I did a tour, checking the window locks as well as the catch on the front door. The deadbolt would be fine, but the door might as well have been made of balsa wood. One good kick, and it would splinter, tearing the jamb out. I used one of the kitchen chairs and put it under the knob on the front door. The back door had a window on the top part, so it wouldn't make any difference even with a chair on it. There was no way to make the place more secure. I changed into jeans and put the piece in the clip-on belt holster and left my shirt out. I walked around in front of the apartments and looked at how the cars were parked and the access to my front door. There wasn't an easy way to protect the door, so I went back to the dumpster and poked around until I had a grocery bag full of beer cans and a couple of bottles. There was a broken-up kite with a roll of string on my back porch, so I poked holes in the beer cans and strung them up in the living room. I ran the string from my door knob to the bumper of my truck, so if someone came to the door, they would trip on the string and rattle the cans. I put the cans by my bed with the string through the bottom of the front window. Next, I put some bottles and cans on the ground around my truck. I put a bottle standing up, with one lying down. Next was a can standing, then a can or bottle lying down. It looked like a bunch of trash, except that if it were moved, I would know. If someone knocked over a bottle or stood a can up, I would know. I felt better about my security and figured I would be up early enough to pick up the empties before the apartment manager saw the trash. When I got ready for bed, I decided I should leave my prosthesis on and sleep in it. As long as I kept my stump clean and changed the sock every day, it should be okay. It took me a while to get to sleep. It was almost 11 the last time I looked at the clock. Clang, rattle, clang. My cans next to the bed were rattling. I rolled out of bed and pulled the gun from the holster next to the bed. Slowly, I looked out the bedroom to see some shadows by the front window. Next, I heard some cans out by the truck get kicked. I slept in shorts, so I went out the back door and walked quickly around the building to see what was up while calling 911 on my cell phone. There was a guy at my front door and two guys by the door of my truck. That was too many for me to confront, so I stayed in the shadows. The two guys finished doing whatever it was by my truck before they joined the guy at the door. It looked like the guy was trying to pick the lock. One of the men felt in his pocket and came out with a cell phone. He listened for a second, then said loud enough for me to hear, "Let's get, the cops are coming." They went to a car that was by the truck and jumped in, slamming doors. There must have been a driver, as none got in the driver's door. The car took off without turning on their lights, so I couldn't get a look at the plate. Seconds later, a cop car with the lights flashing pulled in front of my apartment. I went to the car and told them what had happened. They went up to my door and tripped over my string again. I had to explain that was my alarm. They laughed and used a flashlight to look at the lock. It was scratched up, but said they would have a crime scene guy come out to take prints. I told them the guys had done something to my truck and that they needed to look at it. They said a crime guy would do that. I took down the string and rolled it up, gathering the cans and bottles by my truck. Soon a panel van came with 4 technicians to dust for fingerprints. One guy was looking at my truck and said, "Do you leave your door unlocked?" Nope, it was locked when I parked it earlier. They shined flashlights in the window and said there was some kind of thin wire between the door and the steering wheel. I went to the other side of the truck and looked through the window. There was a grenade taped on the door. Pretty crude, but effective. One of the crime guys found the pin on the ground and said, "We need to clear these apartments and get the bomb guys out here. Your truck may have more stuff on it if you say they were down under it." I told the cops, "The landlord is going to kick me out of here if you guys do that. Can't you just quietly take that grenade out of the truck? You have the pin, I'll put it back in." "No way, you don't know what kind of secondary stuff those guys left for you. Go put on some clothes, you have to be evacuated too. You need to cover that stock you have as it scares the shit out of people." I put on clothes as the cops began knocking on doors. The cops didn't tell anyone specifically what was happening, but had us all move out to the street. People were groggy and sleepy and angry. The apartment manager kept asking whose place were they looking at, but the cops wouldn't say. I knew he'd find out later, but at least I didn't have to hear him bitch right then. The cops herded us almost to the next block and said that if it was going to be long, they would have a bus take us to a shelter. An hour later, I saw my truck go down the street on a flatbed truck. A detective came down and asked for the guy who owned the white S10. The manager glared at me. The detective told everyone that they could go back to bed. I took the detective to my apartment and made coffee. I showed him my state and federal carry permit and gave him Howard Smith's card. "You need to run this whole incident by him. He was expecting something like this to happen. How come you took my truck?" The detective said, "If the bomb guys can't get rid of the junk under it, they're going to blow it up. Hope you don't have anything important in there." "Shit, I just bought it. It's a good little truck." "Well, you'll have to get another one as that one is going to be impounded for a while." About 3 in the morning, Howard Smith showed up with 2 more men. His men interviewed me and the detectives. They told me to get dressed in clothes to leave the apartment as they wanted me somewhere they could watch me. They said they would take me to a hotel, so bring whatever I needed for the next day. They would bring me back for more later. I took a suit, shirt, and tie. I had on the shoes I would wear. I wrote out a note to Shirley and left it on the counter and left. Howard took me in his car, saying he had already notified Ms. White. They took me downtown to a hotel across the street from the federal building. Howard cautioned, "When you get up, don't go to work. Come next door, but be sure to show them your ID so they don't arrest you for having a piece. Ask for me at the desk, and you'll be escorted to my office." It was 5 in the morning by the time I was in the hotel room. Too late to go back to bed, so I took a shower and dressed. I went to the hotel restaurant to eat. While I was sitting, drinking coffee, and reading the paper, I noticed 3 guys come in and sit across the room. They looked like they had been up all night and were disheveled with messy hair and wrinkled suits. The one guy dropped his napkin and leaned over to pick it up with his left hand. His coat opened, and I could plainly see a shoulder holster hanging there. Shit, I can't even eat breakfast. I started to get flustered, but then I decided that I would go ahead and eat. If they got weird, I was going to take my anger out on them for losing a night's sleep. My bacon, eggs, toast, and milk were good, but barely enough after being up all night. When I was done, I went to the register to pay, making sure the men at the other table weren't making any moves. I went out to the lobby and used my cell phone to call Howard. I told him about the 3 guys and that they were still sitting in the restaurant, but watching me. Howard said to stand in the lobby where the men could see me, but to act like I'm waiting for someone and keep looking at my watch. Less than 2 minutes later, I saw guys coming in 2 different doors. They were suits that looked like cops. Meanwhile, I saw a guy come through the kitchen door and walk right up to the 3 men at the same time the others converged into the restaurant. With 5 men showing hardware to the 3 guys, they didn't try anything, but were in cuffs and being let out immediately. I saw Howard come in, and he waved for me to follow. Before going out to the street, I looked up and down the street to see if I could see the car from the night before. A big Buick was sitting at the side of the street near the hotel door. I hollered to Howard and pointed at the car. The driver was too busy watching his buddies being led across the street and didn't notice Howard and me closing in on him. Howard went to the window, while I went to the passenger door. The driver's window was down and Howard just stuck his gun in the window and told the driver to keep his hands in the air and slowly get out of the car. Another agent saw that Howard was doing something and came over to assist. They cuffed the driver and Howard took him to the federal building, leaving the other agent to stay with the car until it could be picked up and impounded. I followed Howard and the cuffed man into the federal building. Howard told me to show my permits and to follow him. We took the man upstairs in an elevator, with Howard saying, "We like to question guys on the top floor, so if they don't give us enough, we just throw him out the window and say it was suicide." He laughed when he said, "We have a lot of suicides here." I could tell the cuffed bad guy didn't like the gist of that conversation because he kept squirming around in his cuffs. Perspiration was oozing from his forehead. Howard took the man into a room and came back out. He showed me a door and told me to watch, but not to say anything. Two of Howard's men went into the room with the cuffed driver. One of the guys went over to the window and opened it up all the way. The cuffed guy sitting down just stared at the open window. Howard came into the room and said, "Tell you what, guys, I think I can handle this by myself for a bit. I'll holler if I need some help." The two men left the room and immediately came in with me, smiling. Howard sat down on the other side of the man and said, "So who are you working for this week? Give me a straight answer quickly. I don't have a lot of time today." The guy looked at Howard and back to the window. Looking down at the table, he said, "Nardelli." "Okay, that's a start. Which Nardelli, and what were you up to?" "Papa Nardelli, we were just watching a guy." "Funny how you plan a hand grenade and a bomb in a guy's pickup and you're just watching him. You were made at the apartment this morning. Tell me who this job is for." "I don't know that. Nobody tells a driver anything. I don't know what those guys did out there at those shacks. I just drive. You know we're on the 11th floor, don't you? Let me show you." Howard wasn't that big, but he sure was strong. He picked the guy up by his belt and neck and hauled him to the window and stuck his head out the window. He brought him back inside and literally threw him across the room. "Get up, get in that chair, and start talking. I'm tired of this game already. I want some answers." The guy said, "Honest, I'm just a driver. The other guys know more in me. I drive, I watch for people and tell them. I report back to a telephone number. That's all. Who is Papa doing this job for? This better be a good answer." The cuffed guy was really sweating now and said, "I don't know his name, but he's some guy that Papa is doing business with. He's some kind of government guy. He's a spear chatter. You know, black. I don't hang with those guys. Neither does Papa unless he's making some bread off of him. I only saw the guy once when he was leaving Papa's place in Ybor City. Now that was chilling. Reggie's place was also in Ybor City. The area is pretty big, but business communities are pretty small and pretty tight. I bet Reggie knows this Papa Nardelli." Howard got up and said, "I want you to sit here and think about that window for a little while. If you would rather use it than talk, be my guest, but watch so you don't land on anyone down on the sidewalk. Give yourself a good push-off so you'll land out on the street. It's easier to clean up the blood." Howard came out of the room, waving for me to come with him. He left the two men watching the driver in the interrogation room. "Let's see how the boys are doing with these other three. They're going to have them split up. You can bet they all have a window open and have made all of the right inferences. We're not going to let them jump as there are cameras in the rooms. We're allowed to scare them, though. I think I can get away with throwing the guy back toward the desk. Besides, I was angry at him for blowing smoke up my butt. Nardelli brags a lot. I'm sure all his men know exactly what's going down." Howard talked to one of the guys standing outside a room. "The guy's a parrot. He's yakking away in there to Tony. From what I heard, we can take Nardelli down. We even Mirandized the dude so we could use the video for trial. The guy keeps talking about this Jordan Hawkins. We have to find out who he is." Howard smiled at me. "Want to tell him?" "Jordan Hawkins is the regional director for the Federal Unemployment Agency. I guess that's employment rather than unemployment, but he is my boss." "Well, we have him dead to rights," the agent said. "I think we need to send someone out to pick him up." He looked at me and said, "Call your office and see if you can find out if he's there." I went to a nearby desk and called through to Ms. White. I explained that I was in the U.S. Marshal's office and was asked to see if Mr. Hawkins was in the office. He was in earlier, but left for an appointment. He said he had an 8:30. "I figured you wouldn't be in today from the way Mr. Smith was talking last night. Did something happen?" I told her that I would tell her later, but asked her if she knew where Mr. Hawkins' appointment was. She put me on hold and came back to the phone. "Funny, he has an appointment with Anthony Nardelli. You might not know this, but Anthony Nardelli is the one known as Papa. He has a restaurant real close to Reggie's." I thanked her and said I would probably be in later. After relaying the information to Howard, he called a couple of agents and told them to go pick up Jordan Hawkins down at Papa's restaurant. The place was even named Papa's. Howard asked me what kind of car Hawkins drove, and I told him a gold Mercedes. I didn't know the model, but it was a big four-door sedan. The guys asked if they should bring Papa in. Howard said, let's not do that right now. We have enough to bring him in, but let's hold off right now. It might help in the long run. We're going to have to call in the bureau, especially since the local cops are compromised. They're going to be pissed for us taking this as far as we have anyway. When he was finished sending his men out, Howard told me, I have to call the FBI in. They are the ones who really have jurisdiction. We have a relationship with your agency because of people that go through the unemployment process, and it is our responsibility to protect federal employees and property. Some of them could be people we are looking for. Did you see the posters down by the counter? We have a stack of posters near each counter for your people to look at. It's surprising how many people are on the run and figure out how to collect unemployment. Howard made his call to the FBI, and I heard him say to come on up to his offices. When he hung up, he took me out to a lady and said to her, deputize this man. Take down his info. I'm making him a deputy marshal for a while. He's dumb enough to work with us on the QT. Howard said to me, this is Serena. Don't ask her out for a date. She'll go with you, and you'll never get rid of her. He left with Serena throwing a pencil at his back. Serena was about 40, not bad looking, but too old for me anyway. I'm not that bad. Don't believe what that jerk tells you. The only reason I'm still single is that I haven't caught one of these guys yet. We have a bunch of single marshals in the department right now, so the odds are in my favor. You're a little young, honey, so let me deputize you and put some years on you. Let's see. As she flipped through a file, you're the Charlie Johnson that Howard wrote up in his report. You're the new rising star over at the Federal Employment Office. I see you have one hell of a service record. You're just the kind of young man our service and this office need. Like I said, you're a little young, but I think we can age you a little. The lady swore me in, opened a drawer, and pulled out a leather wallet. She flipped it open and copied down the number on a badge inside the wallet. She quickly typed up a card, had me hold still while she photographed me. She glued the photo on the card and laminated the whole thing. There you go, honey. You're now an official federal deputy marshal. We only go after federal criminals, but we can act as peace officers at any time. If you run into a bad guy and don't know what to do with him, call the FBI. Give the agent who answers this badge number, and they'll listen to you. I put the wallet in my coat pocket and was going to go back in where Howard was. Honey, the kitchen is right through there. She was pointing in another direction. Get some coffee in there, and be sure to take a donut or two. Now that you're sort of a cop, you have to eat donuts. Serena laughed as I made my way in the direction she was pointing. Oh, and you can get back into Howard's area by going through the other door there. And I forgot. Be sure to hold your badge up when you go through the metal detectors downstairs. Make sure they check your badge and log your badge number. That's their job. The coffee was fresh and the donuts were still warm. No wonder policemen like donuts. I went into the other office and saw Howard sitting in an office with glass walls. He was on the phone and had someone across from him in a chair. He saw me and waved for me to come in. I went in the door of the office and set my 2 donuts and the coffee down on an end table next to a couch. Howard got off the phone and said, give the coffee and donuts to Agent Barnstead. Go get you and me some coffee too and bring back a handful of donuts, any kind. I shook hands with Agent Barnstead and headed back to the kitchen. I poured 2 more cups of coffee and picked up a handful of donuts. They had carriers, so I put everything in one, along with a handful of napkins, and went back to Howard's office. Howard said, Mike, this is Chad Johnson, the guy who started this mess. I've deputized him so you can brutalize and use him if you need. He's an ex-Marine that needs a cane to get around because of a fake leg, but I think he left his cane where he had breakfast. I realized that I had done just that. Hopefully someone saw it, and they are keeping it at the hotel desk. Howard said, one of the guys picked it up for you when we pulled all the glasses off the table for fingerprints. We wanted to run those guys real fast to see who they were before we started questioning them. They are a real trio. All 3 were up for manslaughter up in New York, and one did some time out in Nevada for planting a bomb in some mobster's car. You were lucky last night. I heard about the tin can alarm you had set up. Pretty slick. It saved your butt, that's for sure. Mike Barnstead asked, how long since you've been out? When I answered that it was a week ago this past Monday, he asked, how in the hell have you stirred up all this mess in just over a week? I gave him a brief synopsis of what had transpired, and he said to Howard, so that's who that chick is you have in quiet custody. You want these guys put away the same? We can hold them for crimes against the government for 30 days without charging them, just like terrorists. Howard said, please do. The more people we take out of the loop right now, the better. If Papa don't know what happened to his contract people, he might get nervous and do something stupid. At least, that's my thinking right now. One of Howard's men came in the door. We have another songbird. It's the four-eyed guy that likes to make things go boom. Do you know he had 6 more detonators in his pocket, plus the impound guys found 30 pounds of C4 in the trunk of their car. They could blow up all of downtown Tampa with 30 pounds. He looked at me and said, they didn't think it would take a lot for you. They only used a half-pound. You know what a half-pound will do? I nodded and said, it would have leveled every apartment in the front there. That's enough to blow a bridge, a big bridge. You know it. The guy is in there doing a regular talk show thing. We gave him his rights and told him to talk to a camera we brought in, so he knows he's being recorded. I think we found who blew up the office up in Atlanta last year. This guy has been working for a lot of bad guys all over the country. We need to put his MO on the wire and see what kind of unsolved booms are out there and question him on them. Howard looked at Barnstead. What do you think? Should we go pick up Papa or let him stew? I'm a little apprehensive about letting him hang out. You know he could be out of the country in a heartbeat. He's got a couple of airplanes out on Davis Island. If you don't pick him up, you need to put the airport under surveillance. Mike Barnstead said, let's watch him in the airport. Make sure he doesn't have any other planes around the area, and let's just watch him to see what he does. Howard jumped up and shut the blinds on his office. Jordan Hawkins was being taken to an interrogation room. Howard said to me, I don't want him to see you. He may know you were a target, and I don't want him to know you're around. We'll try to get some answers from him first. Mike asked, you still using that suicide ruse to get guys to talk? Damn right, Mike, Howard said, it's the best persuader I have. We leave the window open hoping they'll jump. It saves the taxpayers a bunch. Next time you have someone you're trying to break, bring him up here and let us talk to them a bit. We won't let them jump, but we know how to scare them. The 4 of us in Howard's office went to the observation room for the room where Jordan Hawkins was taken. While one guy read Jordan his rights, the other guy opened a window and looked out. He brought his head back in and said, listen, if you decide to save us the money and jump, push out from the building when you jump. There's a lot of foot traffic today. Jordan had a smug look on his face. The marshal at the table asked Jordan, would you be more comfortable without those cuffs? Jordan said, yes, I would, and I wish to call my attorney. Before we call your attorney, we want to talk to you for a while. As you know now that you've asked for an attorney, anything you say can't be used in court, so you're not worth a lot to us. Perhaps you should be recorded as being a jumper. The other marshal said, we have you on tape conducting illegal activities, specifically theft of government funds using Papa Nardelli as your point of contact. We also have evidence tying you to hiring men to eliminate Mr. Johnson. Jordan replied, that guy was trying to take a position I was saving for someone from my community if one of them ever graduates, that is. He's the one responsible for getting Lorna fired. Did you take her? Lorna Williams? She's been missing ever since that Johnson guy came around looking for a job. The marshal asked, so what exactly did you hire Papa to do to Mr. Johnson? Jordan laughed, you're unbelievable. You know none of this is admissible. I could confess 100 things, and it wouldn't matter. I wanted that guy gone. Papa knew people who could handle it. I even spoke to them. They said it would be taken care of quickly. Honestly, I should have had them deal with that other woman too. Her wealthy father can't even keep track of her. I would have been doing him a favor. The first marshal said, he's right, this won't hold up. Let's just toss him out the window. It'll look like he jumped rather than give up his contacts. That should make Nardelli nervous. He grabbed Jordan by the collar and started dragging him toward the window. Wait, you can't do that. What about the surveillance camera in here? Are you serious? The marshal replied, we just erased the footage and say we hadn't turned it on yet. Use your head. Come on, Jacob, let's end this. I bet the impact makes quite a mess. You could see the panic on Jordan's face. Wait, please, don't. I'll tell you everything you want to know. Okay then, what kind of deal did you have with Nardelli? Jordan fidgeted around a minute, then said, he set up a bunch of fake companies that we pay to supposedly find jobs for returning vets. The companies also provide training for returning vets that were supposedly hired by other fake companies. He got money for training, finding them jobs, and then he had companies that received a subsidy that pays up to half the salary of the men they hired. There weren't any men hired though. We found out the military didn't check on social security numbers or names that we sent in. They just automatically paid the fees we requested. SMF paid the other companies as they submitted invoices. How much was your take? I only got about $1.5 million. Papa's companies had to spend a lot of money to set up his companies. He made about $35 million last year. Howard waved me out the door. When Barnstead was clear of the door, Howard said to Mike, go get Nardelli. We'll be able to track down any corporations that he has quickly. Go get him before he tries to run. Don't use the Tampa police force yet though. They have some ears in there and could warn him. If you want, we can go pick him up. I think we should lock up his restaurant and his offices and keep it shuttered while we investigate. Mike said, it'll be done. Howard, you've done a good job on this so far. Maybe you should throw that guy out the window. Howard laughed, saying, We actually have a net beneath every window, so they can't do away with themselves. It's a great ruse. Howard stuck his head in the door of the interrogation room and said, "Shut that damn window before the idiot jumps, and cuff him to the desk. Come out here a few minutes. We have something else on this guy." While Howard was talking to his men, I was at another window looking across the street at the hotel that was there. It had one floor with a terrace right at our level. I could see two men carrying what looked like rifles over there. I turned and yelled, "Howard, get those people away from windows quick. You have snipers on the hotel terrace." The agents began running. They opened the door where Jordan was and was trying to unlock his cuffs from his chair when we all heard the breaking of glass and a groan. There was more glass breaking and the sound of a round hitting meat. I hopped toward the interrogation room to be pulled back by Howard. "It's too late. Don't go in there." Mike was on his cell phone and marshals were running for the door. I said to Howard, "Let me go with those guys. I saw them. I might recognize them if they pass me." Howard waved me out of the office and I joined 6 men on the way down in the elevator. They flipped their badges open and stuck them in their breast pockets, showing that they were U.S. Marshals and 1 FBI agent. I put mine in my coat pocket as well. Down in the lobby, several FBI agents were running for the door, while more were already running across the street dodging traffic. I said I would take the front lobby while the others ran to the other exits. My cell phone rang as I entered the lobby. It was Howard saying, "For crying out loud, be careful. They got Hawkins and the driver, plus one of my guys is hit pretty badly. These guys are playing for keeps." He paused for a second. "I've got to call the local cops so we can go floor to floor through the hotel. Those guys can disappear if we don't. I'm fine here. You know I'm carrying and I won't do anything stupid or heroic. Just catch the a-holes." He hung up and I watched each person that came down to the lobby. I told the doorman that the building was sealed and no one could go out or come in. He didn't like it, but locked the outside door and went over to the desk. An FBI agent was already there talking to the desk person. He came to me and said, "You probably need to open the door in case of a fire. Only let the law in. Tampa is coming with probably 100 men, so they'll be here in minutes." He was right. Unmarked and marked cars began pulling to the curb in front of the hotel. The doorman had just opened the door when they began running inside. The FBI agent said, "Let's get organized, and let's have a 6-man team hit every floor. I want to have 2 teams start at the top floor and work their way down. Have 4 men take the stairs and follow the people down floor by floor. Now get." My phone rang. When I answered, it was Howard again. A helicopter just took off from the roof of the hotel. I didn't know they had a heliport up there. "Tell Mike about it as soon as he comes in the door. I have the city and county in the air looking for the bird." Mike Barnstead walked in the door and I relayed the information to him. He immediately got on the phone and called someone, yelling at who he was talking to paint every target they had in the air and keep track of where they go. He called another number and said, "Come get me. Land in the street down by the federal building. I'll clear a spot, but get here now." He rushed out the door yelling to get the street cleared of cars right then. Uniformed police began clearing the intersection. It was one of the few intersections in the area that didn't have wires crossing all over the street. In minutes, a helicopter landed and I could see Mike and Howard get in and take off. A Tampa police detective said to me, "You want a break? I can watch the door." I said, "I'll stay till one of the lead marshals tell me to leave." A real dedicated Fed, huh? You guys have soft jobs compared to us guys. I was a little pissed at what the guy said, but only replied, "Tell that to the marshal that just got shot how soft a job he has." The guy shut up and went outside to stand there instead of inside. I noticed that there were 3 ambulances in front of the federal building. They shouldn't need ambulances for coroner cases. Soon, news media vans were pulling up down the street, deploying a bunch of reporters and camera people. I stepped into the lobby a little. The doorman said, "Don't want to be on TV? The cop out there is primping, just waiting to get on the camera." I just nodded and the doorman asked me, "You're the one who lost his cane this morning, aren't you? I recognize you as you were the one who pointed out the car that was out there. Want some coffee? I think they'll give us some since I can't do any doorman stuff." I smiled and he went to the restaurant. He returned shortly with 2 cups of coffee. We drank our coffee before one of the marshals came down and said, "They have the shooters that were on the helicopter. They forced it down just outside the city limits heading toward Vandenberg Airport. The FBI found the rifles that they used, so we can let these people do their business." Christ, this has been a busy day. You started this shit last night or early this morning. How are you holding up? I just smiled and nodded, finishing my coffee. I asked, "How come 3 ambulances? I thought the targets were done." He said, "The targets are done, but a couple of rounds went through walls and doors. Sereno was hit in the leg and another marshal was hit in the hand. Those guys fired at least 24 rounds each. They must have had some kind of special magazine to do that." I said, "Probably a modified Remington with an extended magazine. It could be an AK or even an early AR-15. If the rounds were going through doors and walls, it was probably a jacketed 7.62 or .308. The marshal said, "Let's get back to the office. By the way, I have your cane at my desk. When you have to move, you get along pretty good. What do you need that cane for anyway?" "Stability. My fake leg sometimes isn't as stable as it could be." We went back to the office, and I showed my badge as I went through the metal detectors. Upstairs, there were Tampa CSI guys doing their thing with the two dead guys. They were also photographing where the rounds went through the door to hit Serena and the other marshal. I asked about the other prisoners, and an agent said they had them locked up to chairs away from windows. It was getting toward lunch, and the excitement had burned a lot of calories so far today. I asked, "How about let's order some lunch? I'm sure the three guys in there will want some lunch too." A marshal who heard me said, "I'll order a couple dozen Subways." We have Papa Nardelli in one of the interrogation rooms hollering for his attorney. I don't know how long we can keep that creep under wraps, though. A delivery guy came in soon with a huge sack of sandwiches. They were marked on the outside, so I selected a tuna fish and began eating. I noted that the marshals did take sandwiches into the men in the interrogation rooms. At least they were not starving them. I wondered about the handcuffs and looked into an observation room. The prisoner had handcuffs on that had a longer chain between them. The chain was run through a ring on the table. The prisoners had a sandwich, a bag of chips, and a soft drink. Not bad. About 2 o'clock, Howard came back, immediately bitching that he didn't get a chance to question the shooters. They were being obstinate, not talking, and asking for their attorney, who was for some strange reason the same attorney that Papa asked for. Howard looked at me and said, "How about I give you a car? You go to the office and explain a few things, then go to your apartment and get some more clothes. I want you under wraps for a while. I'm moving you up to the penthouse across the street, so bring enough clothes for a week or so. We have people out at your house. Your neighbor is even cooking for them. Some deal. You buy, she cooks. Her old man has a sheet a mile long, but acts like he's going straight right now. We've already warned him about loose lips." Howard went to a board with multiple keys hanging from pegs and pulled down a set. "Take one of the surveillance cars. It's a cool Mustang. Since we have your truck, we might as well give you a car for a while." He handed me a packet saying, "This is in case you're stopped for driving too fast. It'll get you out of a problem. Just don't go abusing the power, okay? The car is in the garage across the street on the 3rd floor. All the agency's cars are there." I picked up my cane on the way out and went across the street to pick up a black Mustang. It was nice, with a CD player and the fancy interior. I could get used to one of these. I drove over to the agency office and went in the back door straight to Ms. White's office. Her secretary announced me, and Metairie met me at the door. She actually hugged me asking, "Are you all right? It's all over the news about some killings down at the marshal's office. What happened down there?" I walked into her office and used my cell phone. When Howard answered, I asked, "How much of what went on is for the public?" "Ms. White is asking." He answered, "You can tell her about Jordan, but just say most of the men who were trying to do you in are in custody right now. But you have to remain our guest for a few days. Show her your badge and say you have dual employment for a bit." "Oh yeah, she knows Serena, so tell her about her and tell her Serena's out at Tampa General." I told Ms. White everything I could. She said, "I'm leaving. I need to go see Serena. She's such a nice lady. Before you go, call your boss or Jordan's boss and let him know of Jordan's demise. You can tell him that Jordan was being questioned about a very big fraud scam that he started. If there are people higher than Jordan involved, they'll split or retire quickly." Ms. White went to her phone and looked up a number and called Washington, D.C. She had an extended conversation, and the one thing I heard her say was, "I'll consider the post, but I think I should let things settle down here before I use that office. Just fax a statement down that I'm directed to act as the regional director on a temporary basis so I can make decisions. Thank you for your confidence. If I do take the position, I'll do my best." She paused for a minute and listened, then said, "Yes, sir. No, sir, I won't tell anyone. If you would prefer that no one knows what happened to Jordan, they won't hear it from me." She hung up the phone and said, "They didn't even bat an eye. The guy just said, 'We need you to become the new director. I'll be right down to get you signed in.' That's when I told him to let this settle down first. For some reason, they don't want the knowledge that Jordan was killed to leak out." She smiled at me. "Are you a shit disturber, Chad? Ever since you started, the place is in turmoil. Go out to the counters and tell your girlfriends you're all right. They had some of their police friends checking up on you and found out there was a U.S. Marshal at your apartment." I told her I might be able to come back to work tomorrow, but I had to remain within the Marshal's office observation. Ms. White said, "Well, tomorrow is Friday, so the only thing you need to do is proof your ads and write reports. They should be interesting. Go, leave. I'm going to see Serena. Tell her I'm thinking of her. Maybe they'll let me go see her this evening if she's still there." I went out to the counters and made contact with all 5 girls before heading out to the Mustang and to the apartment. The marshal on duty greeted me saying, You dog, you got the Mustang. Every one of us asks for it, but hardly anyone ever gets it. Your cook is doing laundry right now, so if you want to talk to her, she's in the laundry room. I'm watching the pot over there to make sure it doesn't boil over. Thank God you have cable, or I would be going nuts. I walked over to see Shirley to show her I was in one piece. She was happy to see me, but disappointed I had to leave again. I said I was taking a bunch of clothes with me as I had to stay away for a while. I said that she should feed whoever is there. I started to give her money, and she said, "Don't worry about buying food. The U.S. Marshal's office is buying. They gave me 100 this morning and said they would give me another 100 each day they're here to feed them and to keep the place clean. You don't have to pay me the 25 while they're here. I'm not telling Bart about the money. I'm going to let him think you're still buying. This way, if he books, I'll have enough for rent. The first is coming up. You better pay the manager or he'll throw your stuff out." I told her I would give him a check before I left and went back to the apartment. I gathered the clothes I would need for work, along with some jeans and t-shirts. The marshal in the house said, "If you need stuff laundered while you're in the hotel, just have the hotel do it and charge it to the room. That's the way we do it. Be sure to charge your meals to the room too. If you have company, tell the marshal on duty who's coming and what they look like so they can get in. I understand they're putting you in the penthouse, so you'll be living right for a while." The apartment manager looked at me warily and asked, "Are you some kind of undercover guy, or what?" I assured him I wasn't, but would be staying at least through next month and gave him the rent. I also told him that a U.S. Marshal would be watching the apartment for me and him, so he should feel safe. "Well, what the hell happened to your truck last night that they hauled it off? I thought that maybe you were some kind of criminal. When I went over to your apartment to clean you out, the guy there showed me a badge and said your apartment was part of an investigation. He said you had the rights to the place for as long as you wanted it, and that I should go mind my own business. The truck was booby-trapped, so they hauled it off for evidence. Some bad guys visited me last night, and they are all in custody now. Watch the news, it'll all come out. You won't see me, though, as I'm supposed to stay under the radar. Keep that in mind if someone asks about me. Be sure to tell the marshal in my apartment." He nodded and asked if I needed a receipt for the rent. I told him the canceled check should be good enough and left. Shirley was at the door when I got in the Mustang. I waved at her backing out and took off. You know I wasn't showing off, but it's hard to keep from kicking up gravel in a Mustang when you start out. I went to the hotel and told the doorman I didn't have any suitcases, but if he could bring a rack, he could take my hanging clothes in. I told him I needed to park the car and would be right back. I put the car back on the third floor of the garage and signed it back in. There was a notation on the Mustang sheet that it was permanently assigned to C. Johnson until further notice. Howard Smith signed it. I walked back to the hotel and went to the desk, gave them my name, and asked what room they had me in now. The desk manager looked at me and said nicely, "You are in the East Penthouse, Mr. Johnson. I'll have a bellman take your clothes up for you. Please call for anything you need. You are an important guest." The bellhop yacked a mile a minute all the way to the room. "You someone important? I don't recognize you from Hollywood. Or are you some big-shot financier? What cha in town for etc., etc., etc.? I tipped the guy a 10 when he finally left. As soon as I had shut the door, there was a knock. I thought perhaps he had forgotten something, but I was cautious anyway. The door had a spy hole, and I recognized one of the marshals. "What's up? Are you going to be my roommate?" "No, I just want to go over the rules with you. You're sort of in protective custody while we in the Bureau do an investigation. We want to make sure there aren't more people out there that might want you gone. You did make a dent in Papa's income, you know, and I'm sure he knows your name and where you live, etc. There will be someone, or more than one guy, out here all the time. We have a man in the lobby that observes people going in and out. This hotel doesn't have any back elevators or back doors with access to stairs. Everyone who goes upstairs from the first floor has to enter the stairs or the elevators there. Even the food service bellhops have to use these same elevators. That's why there are 10 of them, even though there is only one that goes to this floor and the roof garden. Anyway, you can have visitors, but you have to tell me, or us, who they are and what they look like. They can stay all night if you tell us, and you can feed them up here if you want. If you go to the restaurant, just sign for the meal down there, but we would rather you eat up here. In the morning when you go to work, you are to go over to the marshal's office first to be briefed, and then directly to your workplace. Someone will go there with you, and will remain with you all day. If you have something for the man to do, use him, as babysitting gets pretty boring. Have a good time, enjoy yourself. If something happens, there is an alarm over the door that will go off. Get your piece and hide behind something. The cavalry will be here quickly, but in all likelihood, whoever had hall duty is probably permanently relieved, so you may be on your own. Good luck and enjoy." The man left, so I put my clothes in the huge closet and went to look out the windows. There really wasn't anything as tall as this room on this side of the building, so it was safe to be out on the terrace or balcony or whatever they called it. I was getting hungry, so I looked at the menu and thought of the man out in the hallway. I opened the door and had to go down the hall a ways before he came out. Do you want to eat with me? You can watch me just as well inside the room, you know. He thought for a second, then said, I'll call downstairs and tell them I'm in the room. Thanks, I am hungry. Today has been a mess, hasn't it? I was going to order a steak, but the day's special was prime rib, so I asked for 2 large orders of medium rare. I ordered 2 iced teas and 2 Miller Lights, plus some dessert for both of us. I knew the guy couldn't have a beer, but I wasn't on duty. The desk manager called and said, Mr. Johnson, I forgot to tell you. You are not to tip the house staff. Each person serving is granted a nice gratuity. The young man you tipped earlier will be bringing your tip back to you. In the future, just sign for whatever services you get. The gratuity is taken care of automatically. I thanked him, and he said our food would be up quickly. Sure enough, within 10 minutes the bellhop was knocking at the door. The marshal looked through the peephole, went outside, and checked the food and the cart. He let the bellhop in, who handed me the bill I'd given him earlier, explaining he didn't know it had been taken care of. I put the beer in the refrigerator at the bar and dug in. The food was great. Both of us were really hungry and devoured everything on the plates. We both had dessert before the guy said, I better go out and be at my post. I'll be down the hall where I can see the elevator as well as the stairway. The stairway is locked from our side, so no one can get in. If there is an emergency, you have to unbolt the door to go down the stairs. It's easy to watch the place as there is only one penthouse elevator, and right now no one else is up here. If the place is full, there could be 4 of these rented out. Your penthouse is always available for us and is under contract all the time. I decided to watch TV for a while, but decided that I needed to use the exercise room. I put on my sweats that I had brought, along with my tennis shoes on my good and fake foot, and went out to tell the guard my intention. He radioed downstairs and told me that one of the downstairs guys would watch for me at the gym on the 5th floor. Down at the gym, I found a bike that I could use and rode it for 30 minutes and used the weight machines for about 40 minutes until my arms were giving out. I finished doing my 30 pull-ups before heading up to the room, waving at the marshal. My guy waved at me when I got off the elevator as I went into the room. The phone in the room had a flashing red light on it, so I picked it up to listen to a message. It was Ms. White. She wanted to tell me that Serena had already gone home from the hospital. I called Ms. White and told her I was living in luxury. She laughed and said that she would try to get me back to Earth tomorrow with reports and such. I told her I would have a shadow, and she said that Howard had told her that already. She said, you know what? You've disturbed everyone except Reggie. He loves you. Papa's is closed right now, so all the extra business is coming Reggie's way. He says that his business is the best it's been since he opened. His cook has temporarily expanded the menu while Papa's is closed, and he has hired some of Papa's kitchen staff to help out with the extra business. I told her to tell Reggie hi for me. She told me that Serena was glowing over me. She said that Serena told her she had sworn me in and submitted the paperwork to be a real deputy marshal instead of just a temporary deputy. She had done that because she liked me and thought I might stick around if she did that. When Ms. White had told her about my disability, she said, there isn't any rule that says you have to be in any special kind of condition to be a marshal. You just had to pass an exam, and I had done that with her. We both laughed at the idea of me being a U.S. deputy marshal. I said, well, I do have a badge and an identification card that Serena made up. I wonder if she's going to put me on the payroll. That might be a conflict of interest between the 2 agencies. Ms. White said, don't worry, I'm not giving you up to the marshal's office that easy. You've started the ball rolling now, so you have to be here next week to take care of your clients. After hanging up, I showered and went to bed with a TV playing at the end of the bed. This rich living was nice. I woke at 6 and remembered that I started work right across the street. I lay there a minute before deciding to go down to the gym and use the treadmill for a bit. I hated those things, but it was necessary. I put my sweats back on and opened the door. I waved down the hall and said I was going to the gym. A different marshal was there and was immediately on his radio. He waved me on, so I got on the elevator and went down to the 5th floor. The other marshal was getting off another elevator and walked with me to the gym. After he looked inside, I went in and set the treadmill to start me slow and work up to 3 miles an hour. Not very fast, but with one leg, pretty fast. I did the prescribed 30 minutes while watching the news on the built-in TV, then worked on the machines doing most of the work on my abs for a change. I figured after the good eating I had been doing, I had better double up on the abdomen. Back upstairs, I ordered 2 big breakfasts along with a newspaper and called to the marshal that when the food got there to come in and eat. He smiled, probably because the night guy had passed the word that I fed them. We ate with a minimum of conversation, only vaguely commenting on the day before. Afterwards, I cleaned up and finished my coffee while reading the newspaper. There was only a little blurb that an exercise had been held across the street from the federal building. Even the TV news had nothing about yesterday. At 7:15, I walked across the street to the federal building and showed my badge while the metal detector went berserk. Upstairs, I was surprised to find Serena at her desk. I went to her and gave her a hug where she sat. I told her how glad I was to see that she wasn't hurt bad. She said, pointing at my cane, "Thank goodness it's not like your injury." I knocked on the metal stalk saying, "Once you're used to it, it's not a problem." She said there were donuts, so I asked her if I could bring her a coffee and a donut. She beamed, thanking me for being so thoughtful. When I brought our stuff back to her desk, she said, "Metairie already told me I'm too old for you." I told her that I agreed, but I sure would like to lose a couple of years for a night or two. I laughed with her, but kissed her on the forehead before heading to the back to see if Howard was in yet. He wasn't, but a half-dozen other marshals were. They all greeted me and called me the fair-haired boy for getting the Mustang as a loaner. I told them that it was part of my cover and I was inundated with pencils, pens, and other small objects being thrown at me. Howard came through the door just as a dry eraser hit the door by his head. He frowned and looked around, but all of us were looking up and away like innocent little kids. "Settle down in here. We have business today since the story didn't get out. We have a day or two to wrap most of this up. Stan, call the bureau and find out where they're at on breaking down the corporate structures. Dave, call DC to get the lowdown on the request we put in yesterday for all payments to all companies that are listed as hiring and training. Let's make hay while the sun shines." Howard looked at me and smiled, saying, "Come here. I have something for you to do today. Go to work, but I want you to access everything in Jordan's office to see if you can find the corporations he was funneling business through. So far, Nardelli isn't talking, but he is getting perturbed because we're keeping him out of touch. His attorney has an appointment with a federal judge for a writ of habeas corpus, but we're still allowed to keep a suspected terrorist 30 days without giving him up to his attorney. Get over there and see what you can find. I'll call Metairie to tell her to give you free rein in Jordan's office. If you get any shit from his secretary, call me right away and we'll come arrest her." After checking out the Mustang, I drove straight to the office with the other marshal following me. We checked in with Ms. White, and she went with us to Jordan's office. His secretary asked us what was up. I told her that Jordan had turned up missing and that we had been directed by the U.S. Marshal's office to look for some information. I gave her Howard's telephone number, and she called him. She hung up and said, "Finally, that man has been up to something, but I don't exactly know what it is. He keeps stuff locked on me and won't let me even see certain files. Here, I have a list of the companies he won't let me work the files on. When have you ever heard of that?" It took a few tries, but I popped the lock on his file cabinet and his desk. The secretary busily pulled the files from the cabinet, while Metairie began looking through his desk. While we were doing this, the marshal that was my babysitter was accessing the personal files on Jordan's computer. I made a list of the corporate names and the named contact from each file. Next, I had the secretary do the same on all the other files in his file cabinet. I faxed the entire 2 lists to Howard with an explanation. Ms. White was finding several notes about the various companies with past and future dates for funds transfers. She also found a bank book with weekly entries right up to last week totaling almost $1.5 million. Ms. White whistled when she saw the numbers. I found a telephone list inside his locked center drawer that included a couple of Tampa Police Department people. I called Howard, and he gave me Mike Barnstead's number to call. Mike first asked me if this was a secure line, and I told him I didn't know. He said to consider it insecure and to go outside and call him. I did and told him the names I found within the Tampa PD. He gave me a fax number and asked me to fax him copies of everything of interest I found, including what I had given to the marshal's office. The entire morning was taken up copying and faxing information to the 2 offices. Around noon, Ms. White got a call from Washington, D.C., telling her that they wanted Jordan's office sealed and to let no one in until one of the head directors arrived to look over the office. She told them that the U.S. Marshal's office was already looking through the office, and I could hear a man yelling at her. Ms. White held the phone away from her ear as the guy was cursing so loud it was easy to hear him. He demanded to speak to the marshal, so Ms. White looked at me and handed me the phone. All I said was, "This is the U.S. Deputy Marshal." The man went crazy yelling and cursing, saying we had no authority to be looking through personal and confidential files in the director's office. I cautiously asked his name, and he instantly said Amos Davis, and I better remember it because it would be on my termination notice. He said one of his men was on a plane and would arrive by 2 in the afternoon, so we were to close the director's office until the man arrived. The other marshal wrote me a note. "Ask him what the man's name is that is coming. We'll meet him with transportation." I said, "Mr. Davis, I'll close the office right now. If you'll give me your agent's name, I'll meet him at the airport and bring him straight here." Good old Amos wasn't all that smart and said the man's name was John Miller from the D.C. office. He hung up after cautioning me about removing anything from the files. I asked the secretary, "Have we copied everything that can be copied?" She smiled and said, "Yes, sir." The other agent told me, call that in. I'm sure they will want to meet Mr. Miller when he gets off the plane. I went outside and called Howard to tell him of the guy coming. He conferenced us with Mike, and it was decided that one of Mike's and one of Howard's men would meet the guy. They would just bring him straight to the office. Howard said, have the marshal there with you set up a surveillance camera in the office. At the first sign of the guy destroying or trying to remove files, arrest him. Back inside, I told the marshal what the plan was, and he said he was finished transmitting everything in Jordan's computer back to the main office backup system. He would shut the PC down and set up the camera and recorder. The man was a good tech. He put 4 cameras around the office so he covered every angle. Anything anyone did within the office would be recorded. We set it up to record on a laptop located in the conference room next door. The secretary was supposed to unlock the door only after the man demanded that she do so. We set up another camera at her desk so we could get that on record as well. At 2:45, the 3 men walked into the secretary's office. The man identified himself as John Miller. The secretary asked for his agency ID, and he felt around in his pockets, then said, darn, I didn't bring it with me. I have my driver's license with me, though. He showed the driver's license, so the secretary acted coy and called Amos Davis's office in D.C. Mr. Davis answered, what do you want? The secretary said a man was there identifying himself as John Miller, but did not have an agency ID. She described him and was told, let him in the office right now, or I'll have your job too. When she opened the door, John Miller quickly entered the office and slammed the door. You could hear him turn the deadbolt on the door. We watched him do it on the other cameras. John Miller had a big satchel type of bag that he opened and brought out a typed list. He didn't even try to use a key on the file cabinet, but wedged a large straight edge into the drawer and popped the lock. Using his list, he pulled file after file, stuffing them into the satchel. When he had double-checked everything, he popped the drawer on the desk and looked through it, gathering anything that had a telephone number or name on it. Meanwhile, on the camera in the secretary's office, an event was taking place. The secretary was smiling while she produced a key, went to the door, and slowly turned the deadbolt, unlocking it. John Miller finished with the desk and turned on the PC. He tried to access the password several times using information from the list he had. He finally gave up and began disassembling the case. While he was using a screwdriver on the hard drive, the marshal watching Mr. Miller called the secretary's desk. He said one word, go. The 2 men walked in the door while the guy was unscrewing the hard drive. They held up their badges, and the marshal held up his gun. The guy acted like he was reaching for a shoulder holster when realized he didn't have it on. They read him his rights and arrested him on the spot. We locked the office back up, and the 2 guys transported Mr. Miller. On a hunch, I called Amos, and when he answered, all I said was, done. He said, get back here right away, but lose that stuff as soon as you're out of the office. I'll see you in Jamaica. I went outside and called Howard to tell him about my call to Amos. He congratulated me on the deception and said, I'll have to call DC. It's time to get the brass in on this. Amos Davis is like one step under a cabinet position. I want you to get done whatever you need to do, then get back here where we can watch you. You're hot property right this second. Ms. White went upstairs to my office with me and my shadow, the tag-along marshal. She accessed a list of reports on my PC, and we began with each one, filling in the necessary and required information. It only took about an hour, as I only had the 1 out-of-office appointment, unless we counted the craziness that had been going on. Instead of sending to Ms. White for her approval, she coded them as reviewed by her and the director, one and the same, and sent them off. My internal mail had the proofs for the ad in it, so we looked them over and called the advertising agency that handled the accounts. That was done. Ms. White told me, go, get out of here. I'll see you Monday unless you have something to do there. It's almost scary to have you around the office when the whole thing is up in the air. I didn't tell anyone what you told me about Jordan, so no one here knows. That's why the newspapers and TV are so quiet. I would just as well have them in the dark about all of this, but it will come out one of these days. Just to be on the safe side, I'm going to bring up one of the other outside employment people to handle calls for you Monday. Any one of them will love your office now that it's all cleaned up and neat. The marshal and I left, drove back to the garage, and walked to the office. Before we went out on the street, he looked up and down the street very thoroughly before we walked to the office. As soon as we walked in the door, Howard was waving at us from his office. The marshal in D.C. just took Amos Davis into custody. From here on out, this thing is big-time political. He had a bunch of stuff from his office packed up, with airline tickets to Jamaica. Too bad we don't know who they were meeting down there. We'll have a guy that looks like Amos on the plane, but I doubt we'll make contact. Howard looked at me and said, right now through this next week, I don't know what to do with you. I've already been told that several of the companies listed in your information gathering this morning are owned by what used to be called the Mafia. The Chicago guys and the New York guys are involved. We don't know how Jordan was working both of them at the same time, or whether it was someone higher up. Then there is Jordan's family. We went out to his house, and the place is as if it were in hibernation. The place is closed up like a summer home with sheets over the furniture and almost everything shut off. The boys looked for any signs of where his wife and kids were, but couldn't find anything. Now that we think Jamaica was a destination, we might want to go there. The girl you replaced who was talking clammed up. Now she won't talk to anyone. For now, just go over to the hotel and stay calm. Invite some friends over for dinner, but stay in. Don't go out. Ask the guy on your floor for anything you need. He'll get it. Ask him for some games, or take one of our laptops and play on the internet. Anything. But just stay in and stay loose this weekend. I went out to Serena's desk to see how she was doing. She said she was fine and would be even better when the bandages came off. I asked her about a laptop, and she asked if it was business or pleasure. I said probably pleasure. It's for a long weekend's entertainment. She went to a cabinet and pulled a box out and checked the laptop inside. She opened it, plugged in the transformer, and turned it on. It booted up with XP and instantly hooked up to a wireless router in-house somewhere. She checked the programs on it and said, "This is a good one. It has no agency stuff on it. It's clean. Enjoy. Hey, before you go, you have to sign your timesheet for this week. Since you're confined over at the hotel this weekend, you'll be on duty like 12 to 15 hours a day. You might as well get paid for being locked up." I signed the timesheet, patted her on the back, and left for the hotel after telling my shadow where I was going. He came right along and checked the street before I went out and radioed the downstairs man at the hotel. We were told we were clear and went across the street. We walked through the hotel scanning people in the shops, at the concierge desk, in the restaurant, and at the main desk. We went to the penthouse elevator and pushed the button. When the elevator got to the lobby, it didn't open. We pushed the button again, but nothing happened. The marshal pushed me away from the elevator and radioed upstairs. The man up there answered saying that it was all clear. The downstairs guy said, "Something is wrong with the elevator. Push the call button up there, but don't get close to the thing when or if it opens." Soon he radioed that the elevator arrived, but didn't open, so he told us to call maintenance, but to bring the elevator back downstairs. I pushed the button, and we heard the cables begin clattering and whining. We jumped away from the door, pushing other people away from the elevator door. We saw a flicker of light as the elevator passed the lobby, and a split second later there was a loud crash with dust pouring out of the cracks by the door. The downstairs guy radioed the upstairs guy, while my marshal led me down a hall toward the back. We found the maintenance room and tried the door. It was locked. My guy radioed the lobby guy and said, "Have the manager bring his keys to the maintenance room." The man I had met yesterday at the desk came and opened the door. There on the floor was the maintenance man, tied up and gagged. We let him loose, and he began trying to describe what had happened. Apparently 2 guys that said they were elevator inspectors wanted to see his maintenance records, so he brought them to his office where they tied him up and gagged him. The fake inspectors took his elevator keys and left. The manager said, "Go look at all the elevators. The penthouse car crashed a few minutes ago. Make sure none of the rest have been compromised. I've thrown the emergency switch so none will move until you use your maintenance key. Get your spare, and let's take a look." My marshal radioed Howard, who said he would send an FBI team to check the place out for fingerprints. His last transmission was for me to get up to my cage and stay there. We went back to the elevators where the maintenance guy was checking a car. He told us to get in, and we would go to the basement first and go up 1 floor at a time. Down in the basement, the maintenance guy looked at the crashed car and checked the cables to the one we were in. He used a hammer to bang on the cables and decided they sounded fine. We went up to the 2nd floor, next the 3rd, and continued to the floor below the penthouses. There we got off, and the maintenance guy and the manager took the elevator back down. My guy radioed the upstairs man to open the door, and we went upstairs and through the door into the penthouse hallway. The upstairs guy said, "The office bought the other 3 penthouses for the weekend, so it won't be as difficult to watch the place. We have anti-personnel sensors on the roof, so if there's any movement up there, they will go off. We have sensors and video on every door to the stairs with additional sensors on the 3 floors below this. Any movement, they go off just like they just did when you guys entered the stairs. I think we're covered." My shadow said, "I've got the 11 to 7 up here Sunday morning, so I'll see you either Saturday night late or for breakfast Sunday. I'm going back to the office and finish my reports so Serena will sign my time card. She's a stickler on paperwork. I don't know how the place would have run if she were hurt bad. I had nightmares." The hall guy opened the door to the penthouse and looked through the rooms and at the terrace doors before saying, "All clear, enjoy." I went inside, putting the laptop on the coffee table, and turned on the TV to the cable news to get whatever was the latest. Everything was calm with no hint of the world collapsing on several people. I wondered what happened to Jordan's wife and kids. I hoped that would be okay. I decided that a workout would be in order, But first I called Ms. White and asked her to have one of the Fab Five call my cell phone. I told her I was allowed company and maybe I could interest them in dinner in the penthouse. She said, "Hey, I'll come for that and leave Reggie at his place. You know who would love it is Serena. You should invite her to dinner one night while you're there. She would really be impressed. I'll tell all of your girls they need to come make you happy. They haven't had a chance to ask you out for the weekend, and I know they were planning something." I decided to wait for a call, so I opened a beer from the night before and watched TV. At 5:10, my cell phone rang. It was Tiani. She asked if I could go with the gang this weekend to Daytona. They had changed their mind about going to the beach and were going to go up to watch the car races and party. Brandy's dad had gotten them tickets. I had to pass because I was supposed to stay at the hotel this weekend. Tiani said, "I'll try to get back early Sunday, and maybe I can come up Sunday for dinner or something." That would be great. You alone, or all of you can come. Frida already had her night, so it's my turn and the others can fight over who's next. She hung up and I was almost in a funk, but had a thought. I called the office and who should answer but Serena. "What are you doing still there?" "Oh, Chad, I have to transmit reports and payroll. I made up a fake report for your car. You need to learn how to do that and make up the difference from this week to next so the mileage will agree. What can I do for you, honey? I don't know whether this is appropriate or not, but if you wanted to, how about coming over and having dinner with me up here in the penthouse? You'll have to walk up the last flight of stairs, but we can have anything your heart desires to eat." Are you kidding me, or are you for real? No joke. Serena, this is for taking one for me. A payback from the marshal's office, if you will. Damn right, I'll come. When and what should I wear? Have everything off but your smile, my lady, and I'll be happy. Oh, you, come on, the truth. You can wear what you have on, and please come to relax. I promise not to let you drink too much so you can drive home. Serena gave the bad guy laugh. Yahaha. Then said, "I've got it covered. I take a taxi to work. I live in Hyde Park and only drive when I absolutely have to. I'll call my mom and tell her I won't be home till late, if at all. She'll have a cow thinking I'm shacking up. I'll be over in less than 20. Call the guys to tell them I'm on my way." I went out to the hall and waved at the guy by the stairs. "Serena is coming for supper. We'll all eat together. Tell the guy downstairs not to be shocked at my date for tonight." The guy in the hall said, "Don't tease or take advantage of that woman. She's gold. If I weren't married, I would take her away in a minute. Be nice to her, okay? I'm planning on it. If I weren't, would I invite you to eat with us? Nah, probably not. Anyway, Serena is special to us, so be nice. Give her a good time." When I went back inside, I left the door open. In about 15 minutes, Serena was standing at the door, knocking on the jamb. "Come into my den," said the spider to the fly. She laughed and came in and looked around at the luxury that I was being afforded. She said, "How about a cocktail? I've heard all the stories how this place has booze and everything." I said, "I didn't know it came stocked. Let me look over here where it looks like a cabinet." The whole wall was a pocket door that revealed a mirrored bar with a variety of liquor bottles. Underneath was an ice maker and another refrigerator. The fridge had several types of beer, but I shut the door and asked Serena what I could fix for her. "How about a Jack and Coke?" Easy enough. I filled a drink glass with ice and poured the whiskey, the Coke, used a stir stick, and gave it to her. I made a scotch and water for me, joining her on the couch. Serena kicked off her shoes and said, "Ah, so nice to be done for the day. Feels good to relax instead of worrying about Mom. I love her dearly, but she gets lonely and bugs me to death to do something. Tonight she is going to go play bingo with a bunch of her cronies. You made my night because I didn't have to worry about her tonight." I sat with her, being quiet, enjoying the drink and her company, while the TV droned on. Serena asked, "Is that cable or something the hotel has?" "I think it's cable. Why?" "Try channel 744. I pushed the buttons, and instantly the TV gave off soft jazz. Serena said, "Oh, my favorite, perfect for some drinks and dinner. So what's on the menu tonight, and how are they going to get it up here?" "Don't know, and I don't care, but I'll find out about the menu and let them tell us later how they got it here." I picked up the menu from the coffee table and let her look at it. I called to the concierge to find out what was the special for the evening. The special was baked mahi-mahi that sounded heavenly. I walked out into the hallway and asked the marshal out there if mahi-mahi would be good. He nodded and smiled almost excitedly. The concierge connected me to the maitre d' from the restaurant from whom I ordered the 3 dinners, with whatever he thought would be a good wine. Plus I wanted some Caesar salads and 3 desserts of his choosing. I apologized about the extra labor getting the meals up here, but he said it wouldn't be a problem. He said to look for him in about 30 minutes. I went out to the hall and told the guy that it would be about 30 minutes. I told him that when the guy downstairs calls, I would come out to help watch with him. He thanked me and reminded me that Serena was a marshal too and would be watching as well. In an amazing 25 minutes, the hallway guy said the people were on their way up with the food. Serena and I went to the hall, while our upstairs man went down to the floor below. Two big, strong-looking bellhops carried 2 carts up the stairs in 2 trips, so they were able to push them into the room. Because the penthouse had a separate dining table, they set the table for us. Once they were finished and left, the 3 of us sat down to a great supper. The meal became almost a recruiting occasion. George, the hallway duty marshal, and Serena began espousing the benefits of becoming a permanent U.S. Marshal. George's example of a big benefit was that now that he had finished his master's in criminology, he was transferring to the FBI to become a special agent out in Phoenix. He said the marshal's service was exciting and busy, but could also be used as a path to other service jobs. Both George and Serena gave examples of other men and women who had become FBI agents or members of the Secret Service. Even one of the current president's White House Secret Service staff came from the U.S. Marshal's office right here in Tampa. They both presented an intriguing opportunity that actually paid considerably more than my new employment agency job. I countered with the fact that my new position had a rather large clothing allowance. Their positions did as well, but considerably less. I said that I was allowed a generous expense allowance to work with clients. They were given expenses as well. I said, well, both groups provided me transportation, but the Marshal Service did give me a neat Mustang as a loaner instead of a plain white Ford Focus. I told both of them that I needed to prove myself in my first government position before moving to another. George said, that just makes us want you all the more. If you're conscientious like that, you'll make a great marshal. Serena said, with your youth, you'll go right up the ranks quickly. When we finished, he had the bellhops come back up to get the carts. We already had them out in the hallway for them, so it was an easy trip for them to carry them back down. George went back to his duty position in the hall, while Serena and I went back into the room. We spent the rest of the evening watching a movie on TV that she wanted to see. Afterward, it was time for her to go home. She thanked me for dinner, and I thanked her for her company. She said that if I were a little older, I would have had a hard time getting her to leave. We laughed together before she did give me a nice hug and a soft lip-to-lip kiss to let me know she was serious. George joked with her that she didn't stay the night, and she just punched him in the arm. I walked her to the elevators on the floor below, and she was gone. Oh well, 11 o'clock on Friday night, and I was packing it in. George's relief came while I was still talking to him in the hallway. The new marshal was one I had not met yet. I told him that I should be awake in time to feed him breakfast. He said not to worry as they would send up breakfast for him anyway. I took off my clothes, brushed my teeth, and had a couple of beers while watching TV. I fell asleep on the couch with the TV going. I woke about 3 and went into bed and was wide awake at 6. Breakfast was delivered quickly, so the hallway marshal and I ate together. We had just finished when his relief showed up. This was a real waste of manpower to have to watch me the way they were. It made me feel a little claustrophobic. After letting the breakfast settle, I made arrangements to go to the gym. I did it all. The bike for a half hour, the dreaded treadmill for a half hour, and last I used the weight machines for another hour and a half, exercising each muscle group. The marshal watching me said that I was in surprisingly good shape for being an amputee. I had to admit that my time in rehab out at the base is what made me the way I was. This day was really getting boring. After lunch, I walked out into the hallway and asked, do you guys have any training films or anything like that in the office? This room is going to make me nuts, so how about I go to the office and use my time productively? I might as well learn something rather than just sitting here. He called downstairs to let the lobby man know I was on my way. The lobby deputy met me at the elevator and checked that I was properly prepared for the street. I was dressed in just jeans, with a sport coat to hide my hardware. He watched as I checked the empty street and walked across with the aid of my cane. I flashed my badge at the men manning the metal detector and went upstairs to the office. The duty marshal had been alerted that I was coming over and to set me up with all of the training videos I could stand. He set out about 20 videos that began with one that was an introduction for new marshals. At about 7 in the evening, I finished the one I was watching and packed up 4 more to take with me. They were pretty interesting as they were specific training videos. How to conduct yourself as an air marshal. How to transport medium and high-risk prisoners. Urban escapee tracking. All interesting and would probably help me out at one time or another. Back at the hotel, I had the hall marshal help me select supper. We ended up with some liver and onions, fried potatoes, and some steamed squash. The rest of the evening was spent watching the videos I brought back with me. I watched a thrilling 3-video set that was about interview and interrogation methods and techniques. This was an excellent lesson. The hall duty marshal watched it with me as he had not viewed it yet either. We just bolted the door to the stairway, sat back, and enjoyed learning from the videos. When his relief came, I invited the other marshal to watch the new video as I could go into the bedroom and sleep fine. He did and I did. I fell asleep watching a boring movie. Sunday morning was a repeat of Saturday. Up early, eat, and work out for a couple of hours. After lunch, I went back to the office to check out any other videos I could find. They had several videos that were case histories of various escapee captures and a couple of actual escapes that had occurred over the past years. In each case, a marshal was either badly injured or killed. The job could be dangerous work. After an early supper, I convinced the marshals watching me that I needed a leisurely stroll outdoors. We walked around downtown for a couple of hours before we went back to the hotel. I was becoming a little careless because I figured no one else would be coming since the seeming leaders were all in custody. The girls didn't call after their return from Daytona, but that would have been a stretch anyway. Dear listeners, next part will release soon. Meanwhile, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.